Sonya Henry.
And can you spell that?
Sonyahenry.
And Ms. Henry, you're sort of soft-spoken, so I'll ask you to pretend you're communicating with the folks in the far corner over here and our last juror over there next to the clock on the back row. We need to make sure everyone can hear you clearly.
Yes, ma'am.
That's a perfect tone right there. I think everyone can hear you. If anyone has a hard time hearing Ms. Henry or any other witness that testifies today, please let us know, okay? All right, you may ask.
Thank you. Good morning, Miss Henry.
Good morning.
Do you live here in Washington County, Tennessee?
No, I do not.
Have you ever lived here?
Yes.
When did you live here?
All my childhood and until I went off to college in '94.
Do you still live here in the state of Tennessee?
Yes.
Okay, and who do you live with here in Tennessee?
My husband and my 3 children.
Did your family continue to live here in Washington County even after you left for school?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember the address of where they lived?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was that?
1405 East Watauga Avenue.
And is that here in Washington County, Tennessee?
Yes.
Who all lived at 1405 Watauga Avenue?
My mom, my dad, my sister, and my brother.
Okay. What is your brother's name?
Michael Murray.
Do you see your brother here in the courtroom?
Yes, I do.
Can you point him out and describe something that he's wearing?
He's right there in the blue and white plaid shirt.
Your Honor, if the record could reflect identification of Mr. Murray by the witness.
The record will so reflect.
If you know, how long did your brother, Michael Murray, live with your parents in the house on Watauga?
He has lived there all his life.
Do you know if he ever had a job or worked outside the home?
Yes.
What kind of relationship did you have with your brother?
It was your typical one, but I think as I went off to college, we weren't really that close once I left home.
And you said you had a sister. What's your sister's name?
Karen Murray.
Do you see Karen Murray in the courtroom?
I do.
Can you point her out and describe something she's wearing?
She's right there with the black shirt.
Your Honor, if the record could reflect identification of Miss Karen Murray by the witness.
The record will so reflect.
If you know, how long did your sister Karen Murray live with your parents on Watauga?
She also lived there all her life.
Do you know if she ever had a job or worked outside the home?
Yes.
Yes, she did?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of relationship do you have with your sister?
Typical one, and we remained closer as I left home.
Okay. You talked about living with your parents. What was your father's name?
We called him Tony. His name is Edwin Murray.
And has he passed away?
Yes, ma'am.
When did he pass?
He passed November 15th, 2019.
What kind of relationship did you have with your dad?
I had a good one. We were close.
And lastly, what was your mother's name?
Sheila Murray.
Now, of course, your mother's the reason that we're here today. And the jury has already heard some things about what happened and what was seen the day that your mom went to the hospital. But I want to go way back before that. Tell us about your mom.
She, big lady. She was happy. She was a very strict parent, but she was a good parent. She was very funny. She knew no stranger when we were out and about. She just liked to talk to people, and she was a great cook.
What was your favorite thing that she cooked?
Probably her fried chicken. She was pretty famous for it in the neighborhood. Extended family would come around just to get her cooking. So,
Can you replicate that fried chicken?
no, no, I can't. I tried.
You talked about other family members and people in the neighborhood. She was famous for that fried chicken. Did she have lots of friends and contact with the neighborhood, with her community?
She got along with the extended family. Yeah, she didn't have like a lot of friends. She stayed mostly home and just in the neighborhood. But yeah.
Okay. And what kind of person was she?
Outspoken, opinionated, but kind.
After you moved out of the area, you said you left to go to school and hadn't lived here since then. Did you come back and visit your mom and dad and your siblings?
I would come back, probably average every 2 or 3 months or so, just depends.
When you would come to visit, did you come alone or would your family come or both?
Both.
When you would come to visit, where would you stay?
I would usually stay at a hotel.
Okay. Was there a reason why you stayed at a hotel?
Yes, because they weren't very good at keeping house, and it was always, I don't know, unkempt, if you would.
Just cluttered, or was it dirty, or both?
Kind of both. Always lots of clutter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Had it always been that way, or was it something that changed as your parents aged?
It had always been that way, but I think it probably got a little worse as they got older.
I want to direct your attention to 2015. Do you remember that year as the year that your mom, Sheila, had that first stroke?
Vaguely, yes.
Okay. Did you visit or see her after she had that stroke?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us how she was affected? What you saw about maybe any changes in her after that stroke?
From what I can remember, she was less mobile. She was just a little slower, but still mostly herself.
So less mobile. Was she able to walk with assistance?
Yes,
What about talking? Was her
she could
speech?
talk. Yes, ma'am.
And in those early days, there in 2015, if you know, was she able to take care of herself in any way?
Pretty much, yes.
Did that change?
Not that I can remember.
Okay.
No.
At some point, well, let me back up. As far as her mobility, her talking, her self-care, did that get better?
No.
At some point, did she become more dependent on your family to take care of her?
Yes.
Did you know who took care of your mom?
It was mostly my dad. Yes.
Did your brother and sister do anything to help your mom?
I mean, yeah, they would try to do what they could around the house and things when she was still mostly able to take care of herself.
Okay. Once she got to the point she was more or less bedbound and needed help getting in and out of the bed, that type of thing, did your siblings step in to help more?
They did.
Did your dad have his own health issues?
Yes.
At the time that we're talking about, this time frame, was your dad still working, or was he retired, or both?
Both. He was retired, but he was still working part-time.
Do you remember where he worked?
I remember Securitas Security.
Okay.
He was doing that part-time.
And when he worked, do you know who was responsible for taking care of your mom?
It was still him, and he had asked my brother and sister to help.
Okay. So they helped. They also had a part in taking care of her.
Yes.
At any time, did you feel like your mom needed more care than she was getting at home?
Yes.
What made you feel that way?
Because I guess I felt that way because I knew that they probably couldn't give her the care that she needed to the extent that she needed it.
And what kind of care are we talking about?
Bathing, I guess lifting, things like that. I knew that they could do it to a certain extent, but probably not to the extent that she would probably need.
Now, I know that you weren't living here in Washington County, but did you ever offer any assistance or to help in any way?
I did. I had a conversation with my father to help. My husband and I offered to help, even bring her to Chattanooga where we live, and he refused. He didn't want to do that.
Do you remember, I want to take you to 2019, the year that your mom passed. Did you visit with her that year?
Yes, I did.
Do you remember when you came to visit with your parents and your siblings?
I do, because I came in February. That's her birthday month, and I came up just briefly for the weekend to see her. And then I came back that July for Jonesboro Days so my kids could come see their papa.
Let's talk about when you came in February around her birthday. Did you see your mom then?
I did,
Were you staying in the house or in a hotel?
in a hotel.
Were you by yourself or did your kids come in February?
I came by myself.
Okay. How did your mom look to you in February of 2019?
Well, she looked how she normally looked when I came, which was never well. And usually when I would come, she was always, in the bed, covered up. So I would just see basically her face, neck area, and say hi. But at that point, she was nonverbal, so there was no speaking. But she would look at me, and that was the extent of it.
So she would look at you, so she would see that you were there. Did she of course we understand that she looked unwell at this point, but did she look like she was being taken care of?
From what I understood, yes.
Did she look clean?
Well, yes, because I only saw from her head and her neck, so I just assumed she was getting taken care of.
So let's talk about when you went in July. Was there any kind of difference between how she looked in July as how she looked in February?
It was about the same. From what I remember, it was about the same.
Okay. And how did she look? Was she in bed, in a chair? How was she when you saw her?
She was in bed again, just in her nightgown, what I could see on her shoulder, and looked the same.
Okay. And was she still able to look at you, track you when you were there, or was it a little bit different in July?
She could track me, but not as well. It took her a little longer, from what I remember, in July.
So let's talk about the day that your mom was taken to the hospital. How did you find out that your mom had been taken to the hospital?
I got a phone call. I think it was from my sister. Can't remember if it was my sister or my dad, who called to say that they had had trouble getting her out of bed, and she had hit her foot, And so they took her in because they realized that it was worse than what they thought.
Did you have immediate concerns about your mom when you had that conversation with your family?
No, because of her condition, and she had been sick for so long. I was just like, okay, keep me posted. Since, you know, you're taking her in and she's getting checked on, just keep me posted. So no major concern.
Did they keep you posted on how she was doing?
They did.
At some point, did you feel like it was necessary for you to come into town?
Yes, I think it was the next day, from what I can remember, that I asked them to let me see her via the phone video call, and she just didn't. She looked worse, and they said, you probably want to come up, and so I came.
Okay. How did she look different on that video call than when you had last seen her?
Her face just looked, I can't fully describe it, she just looked worse.
Okay. Did you come into town?
I did.
Okay. And when you came into town, what did you do?
I went straight to the hospital to see her. She was in the ICU.
Did you talk to any of the doctors or nurses while you were there?
Yes, I remember a doctor coming in to talk to me when I was there.
When you saw her in person there in the ICU, what did you think about how she looked?
Well, again, all I could see was her head because they had her covered in a special bed with some sheets that were blowing. It was very dramatic and just different. And I could tell that she wasn't going to be with us longer.
Did you talk to anyone, or the doctor, about her injury to her leg that prompted the call to 911?
I asked about it, and I don't remember who the doctor was. I just remember it was a man, and he came in, and he seemed very angry, which I found very disturbing. Not that he was angry, but just the way he was looking at me, I was uncomfortable. And he began to tell me that he thought that that what had happened to her wasn't matching up with what my family said.
Did you see her injury?
Briefly, he lifted it up. They had already set her foot, so yeah, I got to see it.
What did you think about it when you saw it?
It looked terrible.
Okay.
Terrible.
I know that at some point in this investigation, you had a phone conversation with Blake Ketron from Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. Do you recall that? Mm-hmm. And of course, in preparation for your testimony today, you had a conversation with General Ray and myself. Is that right?
Yes.
In the course of those conversations, you were given a little bit more information about the condition that your mom was in. Is that right?
Yes.
How she was found. Did you have any idea that things had gotten that bad with your mom?
I did not.
Did you ever have any indication that things were that bad from your dad or from your siblings?
No.
Your Honor, if I could have just one moment. If you recall, when you talked to Agent Ketron, he had asked you about the last time that you had seen your mother. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And when you spoke to him, you believed the last time you had seen your mom was in February. Is that right?
Yes.
When you were speaking with General Ray and myself, you mentioned that July visit. Was that something that you remembered later on, or why was there a reason?
It was. I think because I was by myself for the February and birthday, and it was just kind of more of an emotional. I got to see her for her birthday, but then when July came, I guess I was more happy because I came up with my kids, and it was Jonesboro days. And again, I just saw her briefly, and the rest of the time we were just kind of hanging out, doing the Jonesboro days stuff.
Doing the tourist stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. You told us that when you had found out that your mom had been taken to the hospital, that you were told what they thought had happened to her ankle, to her leg. At the time you got this information, were you concerned that she was seriously hurt?
No. No.
Did you feel differently about that when you saw what her ankle looked like?
Yes.
Did you feel like it was a little bit more serious than you initially had been told?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. From, in the course, because we know this happened in 2019, so we've had 4.5 years since your mom passed. In the time since your mother passed away, have you had conversations with Michael or Karen?
Yes.
In your conversations with them, did they ever talk to you about what happened to your mom?
Yes. From what I can remember, my sister she just thought it was something that happened when they were trying to get her up out of the bed, that they accidentally bumped her foot getting her out, and she had no idea it was that serious.
When you were told about the condition that your mom was found in when EMS came into her room that day, you told us that that was the first time you had heard that. Is that right? Had your brother or sister ever told you how bad it was?
No.
Had they ever told you about not cleaning her or changing her?
No.
I have no further questions.
Cross-examination.
Ms. Hendry, thank you for being here. We go back through some of the things you testified to here on direct. So I'm talking about your mom. Sounds like she was kind of the bedrock for your family. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Now is it correct? She stayed at home. She ran the house while y'all were growing up. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay. What did your dad do for a living?
He was a police officer.
Okay. What did he do before that?
He was in the Navy.
Okay. When did he retire from the police? Do you remember?
I don't remember what year that was.
Okay. Been some time before the events we're talking about here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that home at 1405 East Watauga, that was where you grew up? That was the family home?
Yes.
Okay. You talked to him about your father's health conditions as he was getting older. Do you remember what kind of health problems he had?
He had kidney issues. He had been on dialysis years before. He had heart issues. He had had a heart attack before.
Do you have anything like sciatica or any problems with his back or anything like that? If you remember?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, that's fine. You said your mom didn't get out a lot, didn't have, you said, a lot of close friends or anything. It sounded like, is it fair to say that the home there was where she was most comfortable?
Yes.
Okay. How long did they? Are you the oldest child?
I'm the middle child.
Middle child. Okay. How long have they lived in that house since they got married, or when they moved in there?
I mean, they got married, and they used to live in Florida, like when we were babies.
Okay.
And I think they moved to Johnson City around 80.
Okay.
What I remember.
Somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But that was the only home that they had since they moved back to Tennessee. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay. Now, you said that usually when you came in, you would stay at a hotel because the condition of the home, it was, I think you said it was unkempt. And that's just the way it always was. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So there was nothing about it that you would see when you come in that was really out of the ordinary in terms of what you were used to seeing?
That's correct.
Okay. As your mom got older and started having these health problems, was your dad the one that would make the decisions for her in terms of what she was doing or
Yes, sir.
care she was getting? Okay. Was your mom on his insurance, or do you remember?
From what I know, yes.
So is it fair to characterize the situation there at home as that your, especially as your mom got her condition degraded, that your dad was pretty much the person in charge of the house and the decision making? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Was he a stubborn man?
Yes, he could be.
Could be.
Yes.
Said your mom was stern. I'm sure they bumped heads a few times over the years. So you said when you came to visit in February of 2019 that she, would you characterize her as looking kind of frail in appearance?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Was she having problems with eating by this point?
Yes.
Okay. What were the problems that she was having?
Just she would eat slower. She wasn't eating as much, and she would need some assistance.
Okay. Was she getting to the point where she was refusing to eat, or she was fighting when they tried to feed her, or do you know?
I assume not, but I'm not
Okay.
totally sure about that.
Okay. You said she didn't look well. Is that just kind of, was that sort of over the years, I guess, as her condition degraded, she just kind of looked more and more sickly? Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
Okay. And that she was covered up. Did your mother had she had a blood clotting condition, didn't she?
Yes.
Okay. Was she apt to get cold a little easier?
Yes.
Okay. Did she stay covered up because of that? She usually keep a blanket on her or something?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you visited in February 2019, you said by that point she had become nonverbal. How long had that been the case where she wasn't really talking anymore? If roughly, I know I'm not asking to the day, but
I would say it had been at least a few months
Okay.
at that point.
let me come right back to that point because that actually gets me to something else I want to ask about. Now, do you recall something happening with her in early 2018 where she had to go to the hospital?
Yes.
Okay. What happened then?
I believe she'd had a stroke, and I think she'd also had some other blood clot issues.
Okay. Do you remember if she had pneumonia or anything like that?
I can't fully remember.
Okay. But your dad, your siblings, they took her to the hospital on that occasion?
Yes.
Okay. Then when she was released, she went to a nursing home, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when she was, at this point, whenever she was in this nursing home, was she still verbal? She was still able to talk?
Yes.
Okay. This would have put us probably late January, early February 2018, just for context about what we're talking about. I'd say, does that sound about right?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, you talked some about the conversations you had with your dad about possibly bringing your mom down to Chattanooga, or where exactly near Chattanooga do you live? So,
I live in the suburb Ottawa.
Ottawa. Okay. Now, I want to keep calling it Chattanooga if it's not. So, but whenever you, when this time when she was in Cornerstone and she was getting out, was there a conversation? Was that when one of the conversations happened about you bringing her to your house, or do you remember?
It could have. I'm not completely sure. It might have been one of the times we had that conversation.
Been 6 years, so it's, I think you can be excused for not remembering exactly. Do you remember, was there any conversation about putting her in a nursing home or something long term at that point?
Yes.
Okay. And why wasn't she put in a nursing home at that point?
From what I can remember, he wanted to be able to take care of her at the house. They felt like they could provide that care.
Okay. This was your dad?
This was my father.
Okay.
Yes. And he felt that he could do that with the help of my brother and sister.
Okay. Was there any financial worries about being able to afford putting her in a nursing home?
Yes, because he couldn't afford the care. I can't remember how much it was, but I just remember he couldn't afford it, and so he was like, "Well, we'll make do, and we'll keep her here and take care of her."
Okay. Do you believe that were you comfortable with that decision for them to take her back home and take care of her at that point?
I was not completely comfortable with that, no.
Okay.
But it was not up to me.
Okay.
But I made my opinion known.
Okay.
But no,
So that was your dad made that call?
my dad made that call.
Okay. What made you uncomfortable with taking her home like that?
Because I knew that she needed some superior care, and I knew that they could probably care for her, but not to the extent that she would need.
Okay. Your dad and your siblings, now they, best of your knowledge, they didn't have any kind of medical training or medical knowledge or anything like that, did they?
No.
Okay. Is that kind of what your concern was? You thought this was more than they were capable of handling?
Yes.
Okay. Now, for a while, did it seem like they were doing okay?
Yes.
All right. When you'd come to visit and you'd see your mom, I mean, initially when she was still verbal, was she still able to, she's still ambulatory to a degree, it seemed like they were getting by?
Yes.
Okay. You feel like they were, I guess for lack of a better term, doing the best that they could?
Yes.
Okay. Now you said that sometime before this February 2019 visit, she'd become nonverbal, so her condition had continued to degrade, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Was she bedridden by the time of February you came? Was she pretty well confined to the bed at that point?
Yes.
All right. Do you know if they had any problems? I don't know if you recall this, but do you know if they had any problems with getting her to roll over on one side, or if she would fight him about that? Do you remember anything about that?
I do not know.
Okay. Were there any pets in the home?
No, not that I'm aware of.
You know if your sister had any cats or anything?
She had cats. I just knew they were outside. At least when I came to visit, they were always outside on the porch.
Okay. You know if they ever came in?
I do not know.
Okay. I'm jumping around a little bit, but I want to ask about after the events that happened with your mother, did you go over to the house
Yes.
August 2019?
Yes.
Okay. Did you go in and look around?
Yes.
Okay. Did the house seem out of the ordinary in terms of appearance of what it normally was?
No.
Okay. Do you remember telling Agent Ketron when you talked to him about the house smelling like cat urine?
I remember it just smelled like urine because I do know that they would have, I guess you would say, accidents changing her. So it wasn't surprising to me that it smelled like urine back in the room that she was in. The carpet.
That one of the issues that plagued your mother was over the years was she developed incontinence. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. That was. Had you ever had in the times that you came to visit that you had to assist with getting her changed and doing all those things?
No.
Okay. Do you know how often in a given? I don't know if you have any idea or not. If you had any given day, how often that she would have accidents or things like this would happen? I don't know if you have any idea.
I don't have any idea.
Okay. Now you talked about coming back to visit in July of 2019, and that she looked, for what you were able to see, that she looked pretty much the same as she had before, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know, had she developed any problems with, a lot of times with strokes, people have one side of the body that's more affected than the other. Do you know if she had one side that was more affected? Did she have left side, right side problems?
Trying to remember. I mean, she was always covered up, so I don't think I remember any one side. She just was always just laying there.
Okay. Was there anything in July 2019 different about your mom that from February other than what you talked about there that you can remember? She seemed about the same?
About the same, just a little slower tracking me.
Did you become more concerned about their ability to take care of her as she degraded more?
I think at that point I still wasn't sure what the level of care they were giving her. I just assumed she was getting taken care of best that they could do.
Did you feel like your family? Let me ask this first, and it may seem like a silly question, but you believe your dad loved your mom, right?
Yes.
Okay. How long were they married at the time they passed?
Can't do the math, but over 45 years.
Okay. Long time to be together. Your siblings believe they loved your mom too? Okay. Do you believe even feeling that way about their mom, did you feel at that time that they were in over their head in terms of what needed to be done for your mom versus what they could do?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Did that feeling grow as you saw her get worse and worse, become nonverbal, become bedridden, all this? Did that feeling grow that you thought, hey, this is out of your league?
I don't know if I'd say it grew because I'd kind of already made that known to them, so it was just kind of the same.
Okay. You had a lot of reservation to begin with. It didn't go away, certainly. Okay. Did you have particular concerns with your siblings? Anything about, let's say, with Karen? Is there anything about Karen that caused you concern in terms of her ability to be able to help take care of your mom?
I mean, not really, outside of maybe not being strong enough to lift her, I guess, but otherwise, no.
And you said your dad wasn't really strong enough to, at that point, with his problems, he wasn't really strong enough to lift her either. Is that
Correct.
right? What about with Michael? Is there any concerns with him?
I knew he would be strong enough to lift, so that's why I was like, okay, they're going to be able to at least give her some basic care.
Okay. Any other concerns about him being able to assist?
Not really, no.
Okay. You remember, in speaking with Agent Ketron, saying that, you had made a statement that your siblings, that they could barely take care of themselves. You remember saying that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what did you mean by that?
Well, just because they were always just, in my opinion, a little more immature. And so it was probably enough for them to take care of themselves. So that's why I had reservations, because even though I knew that they could do their best, it wasn't going to be to the level it should have been.
Okay. And as you said, they both stayed there with your parents their whole lives. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe they were, in your assessment of this situation, that they were maybe naive about the situation?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe didn't know what they didn't know?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. Jump in the situation in August 2019. I guess afterwards, because you the conversation you had with your siblings about what had happened to your mom. Did that happen? Do you remember when that happened, proximity-wise? I mean, was it at the time? Was it a couple months later? Do you remember when?
Are you referring to the injury?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Whenever you said, let me clarify a little bit. When you said that they said something about that they might have hit her foot on the bed or something like that, do you remember when that conversation took place?
It was at the time.
At the time, okay. They said they weren't sure. They thought that's what could have happened.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did your mom have? Did she have any kind of history with like falling out of the bed?
I can remember back when she was in the nursing home that she had fallen because they had to put the rails up.
Okay.
So I know it at least it happened once or twice during that time.
Do you know after she came home if she fell out any?
Not that I was made aware of, no.
All right. Do you think when you were told about the injuries, and you were told about what had happened, and you characterized on direct, you said that you weren't made aware how serious it was that you saw when you got up there. Did you feel like that spoke maybe to the naivete or just the lack of awareness of how serious things were, that like you saw it and you recognized this and you know, did you feel like they were trying to cover it up?
No, I just felt like they were probably just in over their head. They were trying their best, and that's all I know. They were trying their best.
That they didn't understand how bad it really was?
Apparently not.
Okay. Is there anything that leads you to believe that your dad or your siblings would have, if they'd known about her being in that condition for some time, that they would have just let her lay there like that? Do you think they would have done that to her?
No.
Okay. So is it fair to say that whatever happened with her ankle, and as bad as it was, and we've all seen the pictures of it by this point, it was bad. As bad as it was, you don't believe that if they'd known that was a condition, that if they'd known that beforehand, that they would have let her lay there like that?
I don't believe they would have, no.
Okay. I'm jumping back a little bit on this question I meant to ask you earlier, that February visit. By then, do you remember, I may ask you a version of this already, but was her appetite staying the same or was it decreasing? Do you remember?
I don't fully remember, but I feel like it was decreasing
Okay.
because I do remember helping to ship some insures to the house, and so.
Do you remember if she had any problem with swallowing?
Not that I remember, no.
Not to remember. Okay. Like I said, it's been 5-6 years since a lot of this stuff, so. Okay. If you don't care to give me just one moment, please. Just a couple more questions. Do you, during this time when after your mom left Cornerstone and she came back home, Was your dad the only one in the home working? Best that you remember?
Best that I remember, yes.
Okay. All right. So the financial situation didn't really change over that time, stayed pretty much where it was at?
Yes.
Okay. Now, actually, when you were trying to get your mom down to Ottawa with you, I never can say that word right. Of course, couldn't be Red Bank or something. It had to be something I can't pronounce. When you were trying to get her down there, was there any reason expressed for why he insisted on her staying home?
From what I remember, he got very stubborn. He kind of almost got a little upset and was like he could take care of her.
Okay.
Because that was his wife. He could take care of her.
Ottawa is a very nice place. I've been there before. It's very nice. All right, Ms. Henry, I believe that's all the questions I have for you. Thank you.
Redirect. Oh, Mr. Johnson, did you have questions? I'm sorry.
No, I do not.
Yes.
Redirect.
Ms. Henry, you said that back in 2018, when there was the discussion about your mom staying at home or going into a nursing home or care facility, that your dad felt like he, with the help of your brother and sister, could take care of her at home.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
And you said that you had concerns,
Yes.
and you expressed those, but you got, I guess, outvoted.
Yes.
Did your, to your memory, if you know, did your brother and sister ever object to being part of that plan to take care of her at home?
No, not that I remember, no.
Now, although you had some concerns about her going home in the shape she was in, did you have any concerns that your dad, your sister, or your brother whether they would feed her?
No.
Did you have any concerns about whether or not they would give her water to drink
No.
or her insurer?
No.
Did you have any concerns about whether or not they would bathe her?
No.
Now, we know at some point, as your mom's health continued to decline, she did become incontinent. Did you know that she was wearing diapers?
Yes.
Did you have any concerns that your brother or sister wouldn't change her diaper? You mentioned that when you were asked about the smell and the urine smell, you said that you knew that there had been some accidents while they were changing her. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you have any concern that they wouldn't clean up after her?
No.
Or clean her after she had an accident?
No.
When you went to the house back in August of 2019, you went to the house after she had passed. Is that right?
Yes.
When you went into the room, had that room been cleaned up, the bed stripped down?
I don't remember. I think so, but I'm not sure. Not sure.
When you talked to Agent Ketron, if you told him that it had been cleaned up, stripped down, would that be correct?
Yes.
Okay. You told us that you assumed that she was getting taken care of by your dad and your sister and your brother, but you did feel like they were in over their heads, right?
Yes.
Did you told them that, right?
Yes.
Told your dad and your brother and sister. But they assured you they had it in hand.
Yes.
You were asked about falls, about your mom having some falls. Is that right?
Sure, yes.
And you remember, Mr. Bird asked you about that, and you said you remembered being told that she had had some falls at the nursing home, and so they had put the rails up on her bed, but you hadn't been told of any falls in the home.
Correct.
Is that right? You said that you know that they were trying their best. Is that right?
Yes.
And you said that you did not, when you were asked about the injury to her ankle, you were asked if you thought they would just let her lay there hurt like that. And you said, no, I don't think they would have just let her lay there with that ankle. Is that right?
Correct.
Would you have expected that they would leave her in her room for hours on end without checking on her?
No.
Would you expect that they would let her lay for hours on end in a dirty diaper?
No.
Would you have expected that they would have let her lay in her own urine?
No.
Let her lay in her own urine so long that it dried and crystallized?
No.
Would you have expected that they would have let her lay in her own feces?
No.
And let her lay there so long that that feces began to mold?
No.
You said that your dad believed that he could take care of her, that he wanted to take care of her. But his plan of taking care of her was taking care of her with the help of your brother and sister. Is that right?
Yes.
You said as far as concerns, your only concern about your sister Karen taking care of your mom was her strength. Is that right?
Yes.
And as far as your brother, you had no concerns, and you felt like he had the strength to lift her or move her, whatever was needed. Is that right?
Yes.
In the courtroom today, you pointed out your brother to us. Does he look a little bit different now than he did almost 5 years ago?
Completely different, yes.
How does he look different?
Well, because he was at least 3 times bigger.
So he was like you mentioned, your mom was a big woman. He was a big guy.
Yes.
And you would describe him as strong?
Yes.
After your dad passed in November of 2019, what happened to the house on Watauga?
The 2 of them remained there, and it just seemed like they didn't care to take care of it. It just kind of got dirtier, if you will.
But they lived there, just the 2 of them?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if they ate food, drank water while they were there?
I assume so, yes.
So they took care of themselves on their own without your parents?
Yes.
You told us that in terms of your siblings, that you were closer to Karen than you were to Michael. Is that fair?
Yes.
And through the years after your mother's illness, did you continue to talk to Karen on the phone?
Yes.
Did she talk to you about taking care of Mom?
I mean, it would be very brief. I would always ask, how Mom was doing, and she'd be like, she's doing okay, or, she only drank today, or she ate this today, but nothing for me to be concerned about.
If she had told you, Sonia, I can't do this anymore, I need help, what would you have done?
I would have helped more. I would have stepped in and helped more.
And I know that we've talked about that your dad was a guy that could be stubborn. He could put his foot down, right?
Yes.
If your sister or your brother had told you this is too much, would you have stood up to your dad and stood with your siblings?
I would have, yes.
But that didn't happen. They didn't come to you that way.
Correct.
I have no further.
Reed Cross. Mr. Bird.
Ms. Henry, now, the discussion on coming home from Cornerstone presented to you as though it was some sort of democratic election, but that's not really the way the hierarchy worked in that house, was it?
No.
It wouldn't matter if what Karen and Michael would have said. If your dad wanted it to be a certain way, that's the way it was going to be. Is that correct?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay, so whether they opposed it or what they felt about it, when he decided your mom was coming home, that was what was going to happen, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you feel like your dad had he felt, I think you testified some to this already, but he felt a duty to your mom to try to take care of her?
Yes.
Okay. Financial issues aside, that's his wife. He wanted to try to take care of her the best he could, right?
Yes.
Was that kind of feeling? Was that something that was instilled in you all as kids?
Yes.
Okay. You feel like your brother and sister learned that from your parents?
Yes.
Okay. Did y'all get taught, I mean, as far as your siblings voicing any sort of concern about this, that they were, if your father thought that he was doing his duty, trying to take care of your mom the best that he could, that your siblings were felt like they were doing their duty also?
Yes.
Okay. Whether they were over their head or not, I mean, that's one thing. They can be completely over their head, but they're doing what Dad wants and what's been instilled in you all to try to do, right? I don't know if we need we're going to let the record reflect she responded in the affirmative. I don't know if
Yes,
If
that
you
was
would
correct.
give an audible response, you're being recorded.
That's fine.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Say yes or no is appropriate.
It's a natural thing to do. Now, you said sometimes you talk to your sister about your mom, and that sometimes she'd say things like, well, she only drank today, or things like that. So were there times that they tried to get her to eat and drink and that she wouldn't?
I would assume that could have happened, yes. But I know, as I'd stated earlier, I would send in insurers, so that was kind of like the backup, that she would
Okay.
drink those.
All right. But you were, I mean, you said you have three children, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You're down there having your life, having 3 kids, and trying to keep up with that. You're trying to run your life. So I mean, you've got enough to keep up with as it is. As far as like the day in, day out there in the house, I mean, unless other than the days you came to visit, there's no way for you to really know what was going on, how things were happening there. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. And that's not your fault. Like I said, you're off trying to raise your family, trying to do your thing. You got enough to worry about. But along those lines, in terms of day in, day out difficulties that your siblings or your dad may have had in your mother's care, it would have been hard for you to know about those, wouldn't it?
Correct.
And you don't know if, other than these conversations that you might have had with Karen or when you came in, you don't know if they did voice concerns about that as time went on. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. So there was only about maybe a little over a month between, John's birthday is always around July 4th. You came back to spend probably about the second week of August. So it's a little over a month between that last visit and when you came back for what for? Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Do you remember on your visits in, February or July, do you remember, I think you said this earlier, that there being a smell of like urine or something like that you could pick up from where she'd have these accidents in the house?
Yes.
Okay, so that wasn't just, out of the blue. If you walked in and you smelled that was something that you kind of came to
Correct.
expect.
It was not surprising.
Okay. Do you know if your mother stayed in a hospital bed? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. I think you had told Agent Ketron that the bed appeared to be soiled when you went back in August of 2019. But did you ever examine the mattress in February or July or any time before that? Did you ever see it?
No.
Okay, so you couldn't really talk to what the condition of it was then, if it was anywhere near the same or anything. Wouldn't be any way to know, right? Okay. Do you remember your mother having any problems with her feet?
Yes, that she had kind of had feet issues kind of all her life, from what I can remember. Yes, swelling
Okay.
and such.
So she'd have swelling like around her feet, around her ankles, around.
Feet and ankles,
Okay.
yes.
Was that with? Did that have to go with her, like that clotting disorder she had? Do you know if that was some?
I mean, from what I can remember, that could have been part of it, and then just in summers, her feet would swell.
Okay.
Just remember from
Summers,
childhood. Yes.
Like August of the year, being in the summertime, her feet would swell when it got hotter.
Sure.
Okay. Was it hot in the house when you went to look at in August? Do you remember it being hot in there?
I don't remember.
Okay. Did they keep it warm in there?
It felt room temperature from what I can remember. Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember, in talking to your dad, him ever complaining about, the cost of medical bills or insurance or anything like that as it came to like your mother's care? Do you remember him ever complaining about those things?
Just initial conversation, he was just complaining about how much it was going to cost to put her in a nursing home, and that's why he didn't want to do that. That's all I can really remember him being
Okay.
frustrated about.
Do you remember whether or not the house was going to have to be put up? as some kind of
Yes, I
collateral?
remember that, yes, and he didn't want to do that.
Okay. So that was going to have to be collateral to put her in a nursing home?
Yes.
Okay. In talking to Agent Ketron, I meant to ask you about this earlier. You made some comments about your brother and sister having some kind of mental issues. What did you? We go one by one. I mean, what did you with Michael, for example? What did you mean by that?
Well, I knew that he had some mental issues mentioned.
The objection is sustained, and the question will be stricken, and the response of the witness will not be considered by the jury.
You're away from the microphone, so it's hard to hear when you say that.
I'm sorry. All right. The last question will be ignored by the jury, and the response of the witness will not be considered as evidence in this case and not referenced during your deliberations.
I see. Maybe the last couple of questions I'd had for you. The condition that your mother ended up in the house with all this, you don't, to reemphasize something you said before, I mean, you don't know how she ended up in the condition that she did exactly, right?
Correct.
Okay. But you